Bonjour à toutes et tous, vous écoutez SuperFriends, votre podcast comics préféré pour une nouvelle émission du format SuperFriends. C'est dans ce podcast que l'on va à la rencontre des personnes qui font vivre la pop culture et la culture comics par leur travail. Un numéro très bienvenue en cette période d'octobre et du mois d'Halloween, puisque nous aurons le plaisir d'accueillir Morgan Carroll pour la sortie de son album Une Invitée dans la Demeure, qui vient de paraître aux éditions 404 graphiques. Un album chaudement recommandé, et on va parler comment faire peur en bande dessinée avec notre invité. Le générique se lance, on se retrouve tout de suite dans une interview en anglais. Merci à toutes et tous de nous écouter, et à tout de suite. So this was my short introduction in French.
Okay.
So I'm really happy to have you here in our podcast, Morgan.
Yeah.
Hello.
Thank you for having me.
Is it your first interview for French?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm so humbled. So I have to be good. So yeah. I'll try to be
I
good.
have high expectations.
Yes, because otherwise you'll just come back to Canada and say, like, I'm never going to do an interview with
Yeah,
French.
it all hinges on
this. They all
this.
suck. All right. So since it's the first time that we've got you here, can you just summarize your life, your whole life? No, but tell us a little bit about yourself and how your comic books went into your life.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm from Canada. I'm from originally London, Ontario. I still sort of live in Southern Ontario. It's funny, this weekend at the festival, I was talking to people about how we got into comics. I was talking to Emma Rios because, she got into comics when she was 30 or something like that. And the reason why was because she didn't think it was a viable career option. And I think for me, it was sort of similar. I grew up drawing, always loved drawing, reading comics, even if I didn't like them, like Archie comics, nothing against Archie comics, but they're not great.
We've got a lot of Archie comics fans listening to this podcast.
Oh, no.
Now they're all angry. No, we don't.
Yeah, I can't imagine. And then in high school, I got into manga or Miku Takahashi, type stuff. And that sort of opened up what comics could be, because over there it's very Marvel, DC, superhero stuff, which I also read. But I didn't think that I could do any of that because I didn't draw like that. And how I was drawing was not going in that direction of being good for, the house style of Marvel and DC. So, I made comics on my own through high school, didn't show them to anybody. And they were mostly manga inspired. And then I went to, school. Well, I originally went to school for academics, and that didn't pan out. I dropped out pretty fast. And at that point, when I had dropped out, people had said, "Oh, you're drawing all the time. Why don't you go to art school?" And it had literally never occurred to me to do anything like that. So I dropped out and worked for a year, and then I ended up going to animation school because art school didn't seem like it was going to fit me, because, what I wanted to draw was characters and stories. And, I ran tabletop role-playing games and things like that. So I didn't see how art school was going to help me, because it's all, the paintings and evocative emotion, all these things.
Elevated art.
Yes, elevated, fancy art. And I was happy to just, draw stuff on my own. But animation is, like a trade. So I could go to a trade school and learn how to animate. And then that I could actually see a career path through that. So I went to Sheridan College, which is just outside Toronto. I was the last year of their classical animation program. They switched completely to 3D and all that stuff after that. So I was learning drawing with pencil, flipping pages, that type of animation, which I was really bad at. So it didn't work out great. But through that, I ended up getting a friend of mine, Steve Wolfhard, got me a job at a Flash animation studio that made kids cartoons in Canada that thankfully nobody has ever seen.
And we can't because Flash isn't a thing anymore.
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I did that for, until maybe my late 20s. At that point, Twitter was coming around and I was making friends with a lot of cartoonists and a lot of people who did comics and did a lot of the shows over in Canada and the US, SBX and TCAF and all those, New York Comic Con. And so I decided I would try comics. But what had held me up for so long was that I had it in my head that the way I drew was not good enough for comics. Like I didn't think I wasn't good at perspective. I wasn't good at anatomy, and I had it in my mind that I had probably because of, Marvel and DC and all these really technical comics where they have like a letterer, inker, penciler, that I just wasn't up to the task. So I just started putting comics on LiveJournal. Speaking of things that are not really a thing anymore. And from there, it got popular through Twitter. Like Scott McCloud, the cartoonist, like he posted about it. A bunch of other people posted about it. So that kind of encouraged me to start making more comics. And the comics I was making were really short. Like I would just give myself 2 weeks to make a web comic. Just to give so that you don't, start your sprawling epic and never get around to finishing it. And since I grew up loving horror because I had an older brother and a dad who really loved horror and I wanted to hang out with them as a kid, I would watch horror movies since, I was a toddler basically. And so I decided to...
Which is not a good thing to do as a toddler.
No, well, that's the thing. Like, I always say that people will ask me, like, is this book okay for kids? Like, about my work? And I'll be like, I have no idea, like, if it is or not. Because my, like, barometer for knowing whether something is good for kids is completely thrown out of whack.
Yeah, because you watch, like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre at 4.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Although... I was also saying this to somebody this weekend that whenever there was like sexual scenes or like any sort of like, extreme sexuality or nudity, my dad would cover my eyes and ears. So like there are movies that I will rewatch now that I don't realize have like sex scenes in them. And I'll be like, oh, I don't remember this. And it's because I was like, my dad would either cover my eyes and ears or fast forward through those parts. But the Chainsaw Massacres and all that was fine. Like that I could watch. It's very like, yeah. So I decided I wanted to try doing horror because, at the time, there wasn't a ton of, horror comics that, I was really into. There was like, Junji Ito, like, there was a lot of like Japanese horror comics. But in the indie scene in Canada, I didn't find a lot of horror comics that spoke to me exactly. Mm-hmm. And so, I think the first thing I did was I adapted a short fairy tale just so that I didn't have the pressure of coming up with a story and could just sort of explore the form. And then that, just like the encouragement from that online got me making more comics. So it took a while. And then I kept working in Flash animation for a few years until I started working on my first book and then moved out of that.
So where are these Flash animated short movies?
I have no idea. Lost to time. Like every time I mention that I worked in children's animation, people will ask, oh, what shows? And I'm like, you 100% have never seen them. Because they were...
But have you seen them?
No.
In finished form?
I would see clips that they would show us at the studio, but they weren't for me. But it was nice because it was like, a steady job. And I also wasn't animating them. Like I wasn't doing any of the artistic aspects. Mm-hmm. I was like setting up Flash files for the actual animators. So I was just sort of like a middleman position. So, but that was fine because at the end of the day, I would go work on my own stuff, which is what I really wanted to do.
Yeah. And what we can learn from this story of yours is that actually good things can happen on Twitter.
This was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
The time for that has probably passed.
And since we were speaking about horror, because I'm a big horror fan also, I wanted just to know what were your favorite horror stuff. Even that could be like movies, comics, and games also.
Well, in terms of comics, like this is an obvious answer, but Tomy by Junji Ito.
No, this is too obvious. You have to pick something else.
That's my favorite one. I mean, there's a lot more people doing horror and indie comics now, I feel like. Yeah. So you can find like Val Wise is a cartoonist who does great horror, Erica Price in the UK. But in terms of movies, it's hard to, whenever I try and think of like my favorite horror movie, it's hard because I will watch any horror movie no matter how bad or how good it is.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, like I think if you're a horror fan, like you'll just sort of take in.
But maybe I can be more precise then. What's your favorite kind of horror?
Oh, I like supernatural horror. I like ghosts. I like when characters go to hell in some variety. I do like slashers and things like that, but that's just sort of like candy. Like I'm not, super into it. There was an Italian horror movie that never came out in North America, I think because of an argument between the producer and the director or something from the 90s called The Arcane Enchanter. Do you know that one?
No.
That one was great. It was like kind of like Renaissance secluded supernatural horror. So yeah, I like really heavy mood. Under the Skin is another movie I really like. It's like very strong visuals and vibes. Lake Mungo is like a fake documentary that has sort of like these sad, scary elements. I like it when the horror movie has something sad to it. And I don't like it when the horror movie becomes like heartwarming at any point. So I kind of like more bleak horror.
And I guess you don't like happy endings.
No, like I'm not super into them. Like
I don't know if you've seen like something like Eden Lake.
I haven't seen that one.
So
but
you should watch it because it has a very bleak.
Okay,
ending.
great.
Yeah.
I'll put it on the list.
Like, you just want to kill yourself after.
Great, sounds fun.
It's kind of fun. So and so it was like maybe an obvious choice when you started to make comics to go into horror, and you started on internet doing web comics. And I was wondering if you ever considered doing like a paper, but not graphic novels, but more like single issues to get into really the comic book market.
Yeah, I don't think it was so much that I didn't consider it or want to do it. It's that I don't think that there was any interest for me to do it. I may be I might be like projecting that onto people, but it does seem like sort of an insular group, whom this is, I'm going to piss off the Archie fans, the horror comics fans.
You can piss off anyone.
But it seems like, again, like a kind of a house style and like, there's a certain type of horror. There's like, like things I would read, like Hellboy or something like that would be like a fun example. And that at least has like a cool style and like cool art that I could maybe like enter into. But otherwise, it just seems like a very sort of like mainstream, very masculine type, storytelling style and like art. And like, it's all very like realistic, very like, writer heavy, because like in the US and Canada, like the writer is the kind of the creator of a series, and the artist can come and go. You can switch out artists, and it's not so much a thing. That's why like Hellboy's cool, because like he's also the artist. So if I had wanted to get into that market, it would have been, I think I had been asked a couple times to draw for writers, and that's
and you did.
And I did a little bit.
Baba Yaga assistant.
Yes, yeah. Well, that's like a kid's book. Yeah, and yeah, I've done like a couple of kids like graphic novels. But I mean, like in terms of like single issue stories, I would be asked to draw somebody else's script and not considered that I could write a script. So I just didn't even bother trying to break into that, and just preferred to do my own thing.
So how did you like? I don't know how to ask that. It's not a difficult question, but I just not finding my words in my head right now because I'm tired. Because you did the same festival as I did, and so you know what happens to us afterwards. No, but when did the transition from web comics to printed comics happen, and how did you feel?
Yeah, that came because I did a comic in 2010, which was the first year I was making comics. I started in 2010 for Halloween, called His Face All Red. It's like I made a website specifically to put that comic up because I'm very controlling, and I wanted, because I had been posting them to LiveJournal, but I wanted just like a black background. I didn't want any comments section, anything like that. So I made this kind of scrolling webcomic. It's still on my site.
So it was a webtoon before webtoon were
Yeah,
things?
exactly. Yeah. And I sort of tried to, usually when I make comics, I think about what format they're going to be in. So this one was a webcomic, and it was very popular on Twitter and other areas of the internet. So, and that kind of freaked me out a bit because I wasn't used to people looking at my art. And from that, I had my agent reach out to me. I was her first client. She was a junior agent at an agency and was like, "Want to take a risk on me?" And from there, she was like, you could do a book of short stories. We would have to include this one in print because it's the big one, but then the rest could be all new. So that is what became my first book, Through the Woods, which came out in 2014. It has that webcomic in it. I had to adapt it for print, which I think it works better on the web.
Screen,
yeah, but it's fine in print. But the rest of the stories in that book were all similarly sort of like fairy tale horror. They're all original stories, but
and all creepy.
Yeah, they're all creepy. And so that became like my first book and move into print. And then since then, I've done like some more webcomics here and there, but I don't have as much time anymore because, I'm working on print comics. But I at first did not really like working in print because I didn't like how the main way to control form was like page turns, whereas with web you could do a bunch of stuff. You could do scrolling, clicking through, you could do mouse overs, GIFs, all this kind of thing. And so it wasn't as like formally fun to me. But now I'm like way more into doing print work, and I find that constraint is like quite interesting. And I do really like putting in a lot of work to make, if I'm going to be making a physical object and, taking up space in the world and resources and all this sort of thing, I want to make it like look really good and be as well crafted as I can. So that becomes its own challenge. But usually I just like experimenting with, new things and forms. But in between there, my first book and like my more recent books, I did do art for other people's scripts, like Baba Yaga's Assistant with Marika Makula and Speak with Laurie Halse Anderson. And I think it was good for me to work on other people's scripts because I had just been doing short stories, and to work with a script for a full-length graphic novel was helpful for me to know that I could do it, and then now I know I can do it just by myself. I can write my own books.
And we've got just one here,
yes,
right under our noses. But what's really interesting is that, like, you had to, you like to experiment maybe more with the digital format because of all the ways you could, like, control the reader, reading. And it's especially very important in horror when you have to surprise and to scare someone.
Yeah.
So my question would be like, how can you make a comic book scary?
I mean, it's difficult. I mean, it depends on the reader, because some readers will never be scared by anything. And that's fine. They're not my audience. But yeah, like I think also I should also mention the other thing I liked about webcomics is that I could publish it immediately.
Yeah.
So I could control that. I could control if it goes away forever. Like I could take it off the internet too. So I think that was sort of like a security blanket for me. But in terms of scaring the reader, one of the things that I find, which at first I was intimidated by, but now I find is fun, is that in like a horror movie, you could pause or you could rewind and see what happened, but it's kind of difficult and annoying to do. But in a book, you could just flip back to an earlier page and see something, and or to clarify something or whatever, or you could flip ahead, And so, but that is, as opposed to that being a drawback, I find that sort of a fun thing, like to play with, knowing that the reader could flip back and see to reference something from earlier at any time. I kind of want to play with that in terms of like how the storytelling goes later on. And I do like to invite a rereading of the book once you've finished it, so that more things kind of like occur, because I'll plant the seeds of things, I think like in terms of like the closest thing to like a jump scare, I guess, would be a page turn reveal. So like I am very particular about page turns, and I do pace that out, which is sometimes difficult because I am also really bad at counting pages. So like there's been a number of times where I've thought it's a page turn and it's not. But I think it still works. But otherwise, all these things that are constraints that make it difficult to do scares is also just what makes it an interesting puzzle to solve, I guess. So much like in the type of movies I like, which are like slow mood pieces or like vibes, I want to evoke the same thing in my comics and then have like these big punches of whether it's like color or extremely big 2-page spreads or detailed art. Like I'll go for those things, but because it's difficult to do like shock scares, I kind of want to instead focus on an atmosphere that makes you feel like you were saying about Eden Lake, that makes you just feel like gross at the end or like covered in grime.
Yeah, and I think what's also can work is like when you're just putting images between two panels, like people discussing, and so one character is thinking about something, maybe something very scary or violent, and you just see the panel in between, and you just get like, oh, okay, I'm seeing what she's thinking about. Also, just to have like a character or something in the background just coming closer. It really mimics what you can do with a camera in a film you can also apply. So I don't know if you're watching a lot. So if you have still been watching a lot of horror movies, also to get inspirations of what can work and how you can adapt it to a page of paper. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, I watch horror movies all the time, constantly, especially this month because it's Halloween season.
Yeah. So you've got to watch one movie per day.
Yeah, basically, I do.
Normally.
Yes. And I think also like with like horror novels, I read horror novels too, and think about how they parcel out information and scares. The issue with film, I guess now with effects, it's a bit easier. The issue with film is that you have to actually show something at some point, and then the issue with comics is you actually have to draw it at some point. But if it's drawing, you can draw it. You're not constrained by the budget of the film or anything like that. So yeah, it's just a case in any of those mediums, I guess, of just figuring out how much to show, how much not to show, and how far to go, I guess.
Okay, so from the short stories that were in Through the Woods to A Guest in the House, what's the easiest? What was the easiest for you now that you know that to do like short stories and long form graphic novels? So.
Short stories.
Okay.
I think I much prefer short stories. I think that's also a function of horror, is that it's difficult to maintain a sense of dread or atmosphere over a longer story. Movies have this difficulty too, where a lot of horror movies around the 70, 80 minute mark are kind of running on fumes and not really as scary as they were, because you can only... And some people make the mistake of then like revealing too much, which is then not scary at all once you know the shape of whatever is terrifying. So the same thing with long form stories is like, how long can you keep that tension up? Every so often you have to give the reader something. Like they'll get bored with just constantly being on the edge of the seat. You have to drip things in throughout that are going to be scary, while still maintaining tension. So that's difficult. Short horror stories, I think, are fun for me also because I am impatient and I just want to get to the stuff. So even like doing Guest in the House, I broke it up into parts. So there are parts and sections in it so that I could envision what was going to happen in each part and have its own little arc within it. And then have a break so that the tension can renew in the next section, because I do find it's difficult to just go straight ahead for the full story.
Okay, so can you tell me the origins of A Guest in the House?
Oh, sure. So originally, like many years ago, it was based on, or it wasn't based on it. The original inspiration was a dream I'd had.
From Monsters from the Sea or something?
Yeah,
like that.
yes, exactly. Yeah, it was a sort of like, this is a classic fairy tale thing where, either a man marries a mysterious woman or a woman marries a mysterious man, and she finds out he's a monster, but like if she ever tells anybody, he will return to the sea or to the whatever. And it was sort of like that. That's what the dream was. It was like a young woman married a guy, they lived by the sea, and then, he eventually returned to it, and he was like made of like strands of weird white spaghetti or something. It is a dream. So it's like, but it did make me want to write a kind of gothic romance type story. And I think what really made it click is that I read this is not horror, but a Canadian novelist named Margaret Lawrence, who was like a famous Canadian novelist from mid-century. She wrote a book called A Jest of God, which was basically a character study of this woman in her early 30s who lived in a small town in Canada, and she had this just miserable life. She was a virgin, I think. She was like 35, and she lived with her mom and was depressed, but she had this she has these really vivid fantasies and this really vivid fantasy life. So like the first chapter would end with this really vivid fantasy life, and it had this sort of surreal quality to it. And it follows like her first relationship. So I kind of responded to like that character, like, small town woman with like a super vivid fantasy life. And then also the book Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, I had read around the same time, and that, spoilers for this book from 100 years ago,
You're gonna still annoy a lot of people and more people.
But in that book, it's ultimately, I realized at a certain point, like, oh, this is about a guy who was too insecure to handle his like hot bisexual wife. And that the woman in Rebecca, the second wife, who's haunted by the pressure of, this perfect first wife, she really loves the husband who sucks. But there's also this like sort of erotic tension between her and the memory of the first wife. So I thought I wanted to make a book where instead of her, imprinting on the husband, her sort of imprinting romantically, erotically on the memory of the first wife. Whether she is a literal ghost or not is up for debate, but like I wanted to have that sort of exploration, but also in terms of both those books influence this idea in which people will like mythologize or think about, women, idealize women that they don't actually know. And that was part of it too. So I think it sort of like came from all those things. It was also inspired by, I had moved to a small town in Ontario at the time. And so there's a lot of things, it's not on a lake, but there's a lot of things in the book that are taken from growing up in Southern Ontario. So, all those kind of coalesced into this. And then a lot of it I found out or discovered while I just started drawing it. I had to eventually just start drawing it.
So we can say all the inspiration that you had, but in terms of just constructing the story, was it like really the narrative that came first or the characters?
It was the narrative. So often when I begin a story, I won't know the ending. Like I'll be like, I'll figure that out. With this book, I knew the major beats and the ending I had in mind the whole time. And then I would just fill in the gaps as I worked and go back and say like, oh, okay, this solves that problem. You know, this solves this. I have like sort of a intuitive writing style where I try not to plan out too much ahead and keep things kind of loose. If it means I have to throw out art or throw out sequences, that's, you know, the cost of doing it this way. But again, it's the impatience where I just want to start figuring it out. And I can only do that through drawing it.
But does this mean that you're not writing a full script?
No. I've tried that. And when I worked with writers, I've done, you know, the thing where you do, here are all my thumbnails for the whole book.
Yeah.
Here are my pencils. Now I can go to inks, and it kills it for me. Like it makes it.
You can go like 3 times on the same sequence.
Yeah, and it's just sort of like I don't like planning things out that much, or I don't like being held to that. Like so that later, you know, it might be a year later that I'm actually drawing the sequence that I got approval on and blah blah. And I have to do like there might be a better way to do it now, but I would have to go through that approval process again, and that seems miserable. So yeah, no, I prefer to with my own work, I will go straight to like final art more or less. I might not start at the beginning of the book. I might jump around, but I will kind of write and draw simultaneously. And like I'll make like maybe like tiny like thumbnails in my script book, just like a sketchbook. But like it will just be the composition of the page. It won't necessarily be like it might be the panel composition, and I'll put like a note that says like put something about this here. Like it's not like actually written out. It'll be like she needs to say something about you know, a ghost here. She needs to say something about this here. But and then I will read back the sequence, and then if it's moving too fast, I will add another sequence that will explain things better. So it is completely inscrutable to anybody I'm working with, but it makes it feel like exciting to me. Whereas I did try to make some short stories of my own that I penciled, I wrote a script. Because it's much faster, like ultimately when you're working on it. I wrote a script, I did pencils, and then I was going to go back and do inks. But by the time I finished the pencils, I didn't want to work on the story anymore. I was like, I'm so over this. So like, it's more fun to me when it feels like a puzzle.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's really one thing that is really striking with this book also is the use of colors compared to the whole black, white, and gray sections. I was wondering how it came to be also, because it's not just like to put the emphasis on certain things like objects or blood. Usually that's what we can do in this kind of stories, but also to illustrate the fantasies of the Abbey is living. So, sorry. Yeah, I was wondering how it came to be as a visual idea or a concept, and to materialize into really something that is really important for the story.
Yeah, I honestly don't remember exactly how I came about it, but I think it's...
you should.
Yeah. I should be keeping detailed diaries.
Yeah, in case you've got an interview about that.
I think it must be just something like that, is that I thought, well, first of all, I'm doing a full color book now for my next book, and it is...
horrible.
A lot of work. Nope. It's a lot of work figuring out palettes for every scene, and like color doesn't come like super naturally to me. Like I take a while to figure out a palette for a room or characters. So doing things in black and white, it kind of looks more like cinematic too, and things like that. I think I was watching movies like Night of the Hunter and things like that, and I wanted really like that sort of like expressionist, bold like shapes and stuff using black and white. But then also it does lend extra weight to these fantasy sequences to have them be, I wanted them to be like really like as neon and bright as possible. So like the first fantasy sequence in the book it opens with one of her dreams. That took me forever to figure out the colors for, because again, like my brain doesn't work great with like picking palettes on my own. So I would draw it, and then I would, this is my very scientific process. I would like drop fill something in Photoshop and run it through all the layer modes and see how it changes colors. And then I'd be like, okay, I'm going to go with that one. And then like set the palette like that. I mean, I really like working in color. I like working in red quite a bit. Yeah, so like it took a while each time to figure out the colors. But since I wanted to make a literal difference in the like dynamics of the art versus how desaturated reality is. And then there's also certain like, things in the book where there's certain panels even during the reality sequence that are in color. And that is just parts that felt like, especially that I wanted to communicate were like hitting her mind really hard, is that like there'd be color and then it would go away. So like it just sort of was a way to, visually communicate that this is having like I don't know if the reader picks up on that or like not, but like that this is having like a direct line to her brain, like this lights up. But again, it's like very intuitive. I don't necessarily think out.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
You're not just writing it on a notebook. Like,
yes, exactly.
This is going to work like that.
Yeah.
In terms of the character design for the night, so we spoke about video games before during this interview, and Dark Souls seems really an obvious reference.
Yes. Well, I hadn't played Dark Souls.
You haven't, because it really feels like an authorious night or...
No, I had not played. I didn't play any Souls games until Elden Ring. And
which is fine. I don't judge you. I am judging you a little bit, but I'm not that judging you.
You hear the sound of the mic dropping. Yeah, like I think I always loved the looks of those games, but I just thought they were probably going to be too hard. At this point, I've played them all, so. But I think it was I just like drawing fancy armor. So like, but figuring out the knight's armor did also take a long time, and you can see like in the very first image of the knight, I gradually make him like bigger and like kind of spikier as I go, because as I sort to figure him out a little bit more, which is fine because it's a dream, so he can morph. But yeah, no, that was just me liking knights. And then the other character, I'm also not great with character design. I don't have a ton of patience for it. So Abby's character design, for example, she's the only character in the book who has like these like blank circle eyes, which was because for whatever reason, whenever I'm designing a character and I draw their eyes realistically, I think this is a drawing. Like, who am I trying to fool? This is not an actual person. I take them less seriously when I give like realistic eyes. This never bothers me in anybody else's cartoons or work, but just in my own, I couldn't connect with her when I gave her real eyes. It made her too much. It sounds weird to say. It made her too much a real person and a drawing. And then, so when I landed on the circle eyes, I was like, perfect. Everyone else can have normal eyes, but she's going to have these kind of like vacant cartoon eyes. But also my character design process is very like, I'll have like one page where I'll draw like the character, like ideas for the character maybe 10 times. And then I'll circle one and be like, all right, good enough. We'll do that.
Okay.
So like, or like certain characters like, Crystal, her stepdaughter in this, I gave her the bowl cut that I had as a kid. And then just made her blonde, so she didn't look exactly like me as a kid. And then her husband, he was designed to look like a friend's dad that I found sort of distant and a bit intimidating when I was a kid. So I was like, okay, I'll just make him look like that guy. I'll make Crystal have this bowl cut, and then like we'll figure it out as we go.
Does he know the dad?
No. I don't think he even knows who I am, so it's fine.
And I was just also wondering about the design for the Shayla ghost.
Oh, sure, yes.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, she was just, I just wanted to, I can't remember exactly the artistic influences of her, but I wanted to draw like a quintessential beautiful lady who sort of had these like sad eyes. I think originally she was based on the do you know the like color fairy books, like they're from like the 1800s. I think the illustrator is Henry Justice Ford, but he did these like black and white ink drawings that are very like classical, sort of like Arthur Rackham or something like that. And he would draw these like beautiful princesses with like the big flowing hair and you know, these like perfect silhouettes, very like Gibson girl type silhouettes. And so, but because he drew fairy tale art, I think that's what I responded to the most. Like same with like her dress has that like medieval like low girdle and so yeah, I think it was like just looking at old picture books and things like that and what it like an idealized beautiful princess would look like.
And since you told us before that you were not really good at planning everything out,
Yeah.
was it good to plan actually the really like the reveals of the plot? Like when we learned that Shayla wasn't like didn't die from a cancer.
Yes.
And then we learned that actually she didn't commit suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another reveal near the end. So yeah, was it hard to like just okay, so I'm gonna put these plots that plot here, and I have to also fill in the gaps and build the tension and rebuild the tension after the
like that was all planned in advance, and then like spoilers. But what I was really hoping on was, again, because part of it was about Abby's idealization of this perfect, beautiful woman. You know, she thinks that Sheila was this, like she sees one picture of Sheila and it's from when she was like a teenager, and she bases her whole conception of Sheila based on her as like a girl, not as her as like, you know, a woman who's 40 or whatever. So, and then, you know, she idealizes her art. Oh, like she was a great artist. She's only seen one painting and it's not that good. But like, so I also wanted to have, the character of Beth show up, who is, you know, spoilers, Sheila, early on, and have her basically be invisible because she's not an attractive, beautiful princess. She's just like some mom, some like local mom. And she's sort of like a, you know, busybody neighbor that isn't that the type that is in horror movies all the time and is a non-person, like that kind of like character or that kind of woman in film and movies, but also in real life is just like invisible because she's not young and beautiful. She's sort of she's not cool. Like she's just
average. Yeah,
just average and used for character development or character like she has no interiority. She's just some lady. And so like when Abby meets her and, you know, immediately has all these judgments on her, like, oh, she's a perfect mom. Oh, she's like this. She's like this. I wanted the reveal to be like, no, she is a person like anybody else, like you are. She also has fantasies and like a fucked up backstory and, you know, did all this stuff, but you wrote her off immediately because she's not this like entrancing woman of your imagination. So I always had that planned. And it was also playing on the reader expectation of that kind of story and these kinds of things where like, you know, a classic horror movie thing where like a couple moves into a new house and then, you know, the neighbor comes over and says hello. I guess also like Rosemary's Baby sort of had this too with the neighbor, that they couldn't possibly be a threat or have their own agenda because they are older or, you know, embarrassing or whatever else. So I think a lot of it is like Abby's projection of what a woman should be, how she should be a woman, because she's trying to fit in with like this family, and all that kind of stuff. So, but all that was planned in advance. Like that's what I knew about the story. I knew that it was going to be Abby and her dreams, this house. I knew the ending. I knew Beth was going to come over early. And then that in between all that, Abby was going to fall in love with her perception of Sheila. And then the fun was, you know, just figuring out how that all slotted together. I keep saying it's like a puzzle, but that is what makes comics fun for me is that it's like an ongoing moving puzzle that I control all the pieces to, but I also have to solve.
Yeah, and you also have to make the readers not guess everything.
Yeah, exactly. Especially with horror, they're always going to be guessing and things like that.
And that's something that you're just doing directly with the title of the book, because when you just read a guest in the house, you would assume that the ghost will be the guest, but actually it's not. It's more like Abby. It feels like the guest in the house of someone else.
Yeah, there was the title also came to me fairly early because I wanted it to be. Yeah, the guest in the house is the lingering presence of the, dead wife. It's also Abby doesn't feel correct in the house because she's almost like an interloper, but it's also that Abby feels like a guest in the house of her own body, and that she doesn't know how to be who she is, or she's trying to be something she's not. But then also, I think in the original version, she was going to be pregnant. So that was also going to be like another aspect of a guest in the house. And there's, a thing where she talks about, she has a pregnancy scare and what that would mean for her. So I don't always try to make really meaningful titles or things like this, but in this case, I think it is something that can apply, Yeah,
it really shows. And also that's one thing that I wanted to speak about is the main character is a douche, let's say like that. But it's not like usually when you have this kind of stories, maybe the female characters are almost perfect or not, but it's something that you decided not to do because almost every female characters have their flaws and some are maybe also awful.
Yeah.
And is that something that was really conscious of? From you?
I wanted to make she's going through the motions of trying to be what she thinks a mother would be or a wife would be. But she sucks at it because she's not that. And so, she has this kind of weird affect because she's not really committing one way or another. And it's just in her own head and doing what she thinks. It's sort of that thing of when people, which is a pet peeve of mine, when people will be like, I do everything for other people. I'm always doing things for other people. I never do anything for myself. But it's you're doing all that for yourself because you want to shore up your idea of who you are as a helpful person or this kind of thing. And nobody's asking you to self-sacrifice and do all this stuff for other people. You're doing it because it comforts you.
It makes you feel better.
You have control over things. And so I think that was also part of it is that she's I'm trying to be the best mom I can be and blah, blah, blah. And it's well, nobody asked you to do all these things or to marry this guy. You didn't have to marry this guy. Yeah. You didn't have to do any of this stuff. But that's sort of I like making main characters who are cowards, who are cowards or who kind of are guilty all the time for no real reason. And, because I feel in horror, I always say this in interviews, but when it comes to horror, if there's a werewolf, and it's oh, well, you shoot that with a silver bullet. It's all right, well then find a silver bullet. I don't know. I'm not there. If I was really dealing with a werewolf in real life, I'd be scared. But if I'm reading a book and someone is, it's oh, you have a solution. Go do the solution. But if you have something that is unsolvable, guilt or your guilt over your cowardice or a personality flaw, that is horrible because that cannot go away, or you can never quite in His Face All Red, it's all based around his inadequacy and jealousy of his brother. It's you can't shoot that with a silver bullet. You can't fix that. So the horror will come from that feeling of powerlessness or that feeling of guilt or that feeling of you suck. And then you build out from there. So her insecurities is what creates all these events around her.
There's also one thing that is quite difficult in terms of comics is that you have to hook the reader very quickly. And I was wondering because even though there are a lot of striking things in the whole graphic novel, the one that really struck me was just the one at the beginning when Abby looks into the glass, and just at some point she just tries to rip her throat, and it's it happens in the 10 first pages. So, but it really got me okay, this is very awful and a very awful scene, and it got me hooked from the beginning. Like, when now I know what I know I want to go further into the story, and I don't know if it's also that's something that's really like planned from your perspective.
That sequence, I think, was the first page I drew.
Okay,
Abby looking in the mirror and then tearing her throat out, and then it's just a fantasy. I think that was the first page I drew because it was sort of similar to a webcomic I did called oh my God, what was it? It's about hand lotion. Some Other Animals Meet is what it's called. Some Other Animals Meet is on my website, but it's like a very similar to this in that there's a lot of sequences where the character looks into the mirror and like, you know, really narrows in on her body to the point where it like becomes almost abstract. And that she has like this false front she puts on, and then this like, you know, churning grotesquerie goes on in her brain. So I think that was like a kind of sequence that I wanted to revisit with Abby, like just like taking that from that character and doing it again. And it also like is based on like me and my like experience looking into mirrors. So like the other thing about this book is that I transitioned during the course of making or after making this book. And I didn't realize at the time that there were all these things in it that related to dysphoria and things like that, looking in a mirror until I was done it. And then it's really embarrassing to put it out into the world. But there's like another scene too, where she looks into a mirror. It's like an echo of a scene. There's a scene early on where she looks into a mirror when she's describing herself. And it's like a very distant, you know, it's as if she doesn't inhabit her own body. And then later on, she gets a haircut and she looks in the mirror and just starts sobbing, which is relatable to a lot of people, I'm sure. But that was based on a time where I got a haircut. And it wasn't quite what she had in the book, but it was just this, I don't know. It's sort of closer to what Beth has at the beginning, like this sort of like the Karen haircut type thing. I asked for like a short haircut and they gave me this like.
You didn't like it?
Oh, it was awful. And like it had like this like complete existential breakdown over it. So I think that's what like informs those scenes. And like I also like starting stories off with like even like the short dream sequence that opens this. I want just like a short like jolt, and then you can like relax into the rest of the scene, like sort of like it's a ridiculous comparison to make, but the remake of Evil Dead that came out like 10-15 years ago. Did you see them?
Yeah.
There's like an opening sequence where they burn this girl alive, and then they go into the actual story. And I love it when a horror movie does that, where there's like a cold open on something horrible, and then, you know, like the titles hit and then it goes to something else. So that's always kind of like, I want to evoke that kind of thing.
Now I want to watch it again.
I love that remake.
I really love this remake also with the whole chainsaw scene at the end.
Oh,
with
it was like
rain
that.
of blood. Like
I have like a weird emotional connection to that movie, and I was a big fan of the other ones growing up too. So
yeah, it's one of the best horror saga.
Yes,
I think.
I'd love to do an Evil Dead.
What was the most challenging scene to draw? Because there are like very complex. Drawing sequences.
This is the first thing that comes to mind, and it's not anything interesting. But the stairs. There's like a staircase in the house that I return to often, and I'm not great with perspective. And stairs are all perspective. So my wife is actually a 3D environment artist. So a lot of the times I would be like, can you build me? Like there's rooms in the house that she built for me that I can like move around in and like just like gray block 3D, because if I think about them too hard, I get confused. And so like there's a scene, I can't remember when it is, where somebody's going up the stairs and I couldn't figure out what happens at the top of stairs. Sounds like I'm high, but I couldn't figure out like, where's the wall? Where's the roof? Like, how does the banister work? So like any scene with stairs was like very difficult for me. And like Through the Woods, it took place in the woods a lot of the time, and you can have a much more naturalistic, environments and things like that. But the stairs were very difficult for me, and even just the house in general. The house, I probably spent more time like character designing than the characters, because I drew a floor plan, and I drew, you know, the entrances and exits, and I put where all the furniture would be. And, you know, within that, you can cheat and like, you know, skew the room a bit more and make it bigger in this scene, smaller in this scene, because you're not beholden to an actual space. But it's still that kind of thing I'm not super used to. So it was that. There were also sequences like they weren't necessarily hard to draw, but they were hard to plan out. The sequence where where the knight first meets Sheila, that I redrew like a bunch of times because I just did not like how it was coming out, and it took me, and like I couldn't figure out the colors or the layout or any of these things. So that took me a long time to figure out, but otherwise all of it is like fun. I like to draw. I have a fun time drawing. So like probably the most fun scenes to draw were like anything with like, you know, even the cover has like these like gross bulbous gore situations. That stuff I really like to draw. I like to draw like the knight armor, all that. But when it's like the actual like reality that exists in a real space, that is by far the most difficult.
Reality is boring. Yeah,
or like her kitchen, like just drawing like kitchen counters and like the cupboards. Anything that has to do with like straight lines and things like that. That's like, it's like a cliche, but like that's the hardest thing to draw.
All right. So I just also had a word about the actual ending. Mm-hmm. So you decide not to answer the question about who the ghost is, if it's not Sheila.
Yeah.
So who is it?
Well,
tell us.
I like to leave it up I can have my interpretation of what it is, but one thing I learned when, you know, my first comic got popular is that once you put a comic out there and people have an interpretation of it, that is, I consider that a valid reading, no matter what it is. Even if they hate it or think it sucks or think it has a bad message, you know, that is the risk inherent to putting out work. So for me, you know, people have asked, because I usually like ambiguous endings, which some people really hate and have told me.
Have they told you to your face? Like,
oh yeah, they'll be like, yeah, I do not like that. Okay. Or like, what happened? Like, I don't like, you need to answer it. Or you should write a sequel to this that answers it. And I'm like, what on earth would
a spin-off.
Yeah, it's like, why? I don't know.
Let's make a spin-off about the background character from page 36.
Yeah, exactly. Like
that was really popular.
I mean, that sounds fun. But like, you know, because like his face all red also ends on like a cliffhanger ending, and people were like, you should do a part 2. And I was like,
no. Like,
what would happen? Like, you know, does it make it scarier if you know that like, oh, the ghost was her sister's ghost or something? That seals the circuit, right? And I think that is what removes horror from something, if you give a definitive answer.
Because you can't have any more discussions about it also.
Yeah, and also you just like, oh, well then it's that. Okay, like put it on the shelf. It won't linger with you if you have a conclusive ending that explains everything. And that is my opinion, and it's just based on what kind of horror I respond to. Other people respond to different kinds, so they don't like it. But for me, it is not supposed to be, again, since I focus more on it being an atmospheric piece, it is not supposed to be anything actually concrete. You know, I've had people ask me like, you know, who was the ghost? Who dies at the end? Like, because it ends on like this like kind of ambiguous spread. And
I don't think it's ambiguous.
Yeah. I didn't think so either. But
who dies? But like,
but people have said that to me. So for me, the ghost is not a literal ghost. It is her manifestation of her own, not so much dysphoria, but her own insecurities and her own unrealized desires and parts of herself that she's not willing to confront. And it's tied to, you know, her, she has like, you know, previous imaginary friends since she was little, but they're all sublimations of her not wanting to recognize that she's gay, or that she wants certain things, or she doesn't want to be herself. So that's why it ends with the ghost and like the dragon and, you know, the corpse ghost asking like, who are you? Or she's as if she's asking them and they're asking her, like, who are you?
Yeah.
And the question is unanswerable because she doesn't know, or if she knows, she is refusing to acknowledge. So I think it's, you know, in horror movies and books, I do like it when the answer to, you know, I don't like it when there's a movie and it's like, is the woman crazy or is there an actual ghost? I like it when both things are happening.
Yeah.
So that there's like
both can be true.
Yeah, both can be true, and both can kind of inform and manifest the other. And so that is sort of my ambiguous take on it, is that, you know, there's this like kind of melange of the, you know, how she grew up, her imprinting on like her sister, her imprinting on like whatever went on with her mother. There's like certain things there. So like things you can extrapolate. But also if you wanted to read it and think there's like a literal ghost, all right, I can't stop you.
That's fine for you. Okay, so last question. You told us that you were doing a full color graphic novel next. What can you tell us about?
I can't say what it's about yet because it hasn't been announced. But it is very much, I wanted to draw something that was just fun to draw. It is horror, and it is not really fairy tale-y, but it's very extravagant and what's the word I want? Just like opulent, indulgent. Like I just wanted to draw things that I have fun drawing. So it's hopefully a bit more fun. And it has some really fun gore in it and things like that. But it is sort of, it will be like a sequence of short stories that are connected through overarching story. But it will be all one complete story. But again, like I need to have like the sections to make sense of. Yeah. But I won't be done that book until next year. So.
All right. We'll be looking forward to it then.
Good.
Thank you so much for your time, Morgan.
Oh, thank you for having me.